And there's a process. And looking to, there are questions that monthly back. That's double checking.
Good afternoon, everyone. Looks like we have 6 or so folks from outside of the OBO or with Ready. I'll give us a couple more minutes here just in case any additional folks get on, and then we will begin. I'll do some introductions while we are waiting. I'm Nick Camper. I am the Director of Engagement here at the OBO. And with us from the OBO, now not everyone will be presenting or talking, but we do have some other folks here. We have MJ Barton with us as well.
Hello,
And,
everyone.
and then we've got our FPO, our Federal Program Officer, here with us as well, Philip. He is with MJ.
Hello, everyone.
So we will jump right in and get started. It looks like maybe an additional or two more folks have jumped on. Um, we are here because high-speed internet, like Director Sanders says, is a game changer for Oklahoma. We are here for the first round of the BEAD process, and this is our challenge process. Um, what BEAD is for anyone not familiar, it's the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment. Our office has more than $750 million available for internet expansion. So if you followed along with our first program, SLFRF, and the one that we are currently in now, CPF, is going to be used in a very similar manner to expand access to homes and businesses all across the state. This is going to close the digital divide. So this is our third and our final infrastructure program from a last mile perspective. And we are hoping that the goal of this is to shore up anyone's lack of access so that we are 100% covered across the entire state. And then this money is funded through the NTIA, National Telecommunications and Information Administration. That is sort of a subset of the Department of Commerce. I want to also say, while we're going through this PowerPoint presentation, and then we will have a second presentation as well. If you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat, and we will get to them as necessary. So what are the goals for the BEAD Challenge process? We're trying to correct any inaccuracies in the FCC map because we want to ensure that all qualified locations are eligible for BEAD funding. The more accurate information that we have, the more Oklahomans can be served with high-speed internet, and the more effectively we could use these dollars to make that happen. The eligible entities, there's going to be a few different groups of eligible entities. So if you are a tribal government, a county or local government, someone that represents one of those organizations, you are qualified to register and participate in the challenge process. Community organizations is another big group. And when we use the term CAIs, sometimes you might hear that in some of our meetings or some of our literature, and that's community anchor institutions. There's a long list of different groups and different organizations that count towards that. Obviously, here we have schools, libraries, health centers, and the rest of those. And then we have nonprofit organizations as well. I will say, and we might get into this here in a little bit, for the community organizations and for the local, county, and tribal governments. There will be the employer identification number is going to be something that's one of the few requirements that you guys will need when you do end up registering for the BEAD Challenge process. And then I'll get down to the internet service providers. They have an additional piece of information that they will need to register, which is their FCC registration number. Internet service providers are also going to have a chance to rebut. They will be the main player within the rebuttal process, and we will get to that timeline here at the end. Another key component for our challenge process is going to be citizen challenges. So how this is going to work, Oklahoma citizens can submit challenges through their local or tribal government representative. We're going to have local county governments and tribal governments come up with a representative. And once that person is identified, our office, the OBO, is going to publish a list of names, email addresses, and designated areas to highlight who citizens should contact with their challenge documentation. So the citizens will not be submitting their information directly into the portal. It will go to one of the eligible entities and their representatives so that they can endorse it or not endorse it by putting it into the portal. Our office will be reaching out to different entities, and we will make that process available so that we can collect all contact information for those representatives. One more slide on that. Like I mentioned, the citizens are going to need to email their challenge evidence to the representative, and then the representative has the discretion to endorse the challenge by submitting it to the portal. A citizen challenge sent to one of the representatives does not automatically count as a challenge. That submission from the representative is what actually counts that as a challenge. And then a speed test is not a valid form of evidence. We will get to that here in just a second. So with the eligible challenge types, we've got availability, we've got technology, we've got data capacity, business service only, whether you are part or not part of an enforceable commitment, whether it's planned service, and then also location is or is not a CAI as we have defined it here at the OBO. Like I mentioned, speed is not going to be a challenge type, neither is latency. So let's jump into some of these more specifically. For availability, that simply means that broadband service that is being claimed, that's being marketed as serving an area, does not actually serve that location. The acceptable evidence is a range of items, but we've got some examples here, which could be a screenshot of an ISP web page. There are sometimes search bars that you can use to type in addresses, and the results will come up as available to serve that home or serve that business, or not available to serve that home and serve that business. So a screenshot of that would be acceptable. If there's been email correspondence or voicemail messages of service that has maybe been refused in the last 180 days, that is suitable as well, or lack of infrastructure. So a picture or something in detail that can explain what is being marketed for that location simply is not, there's no capability to have that happen, become a reality. There is acceptable evidence for rebuttals, and this would be from the provider. The provider would show that, in fact, the location has subscribed or is subscribing or has subscribed within the last 12 months. That would be a copy of a customer bill. And then if someone has taken a screenshot of the website and the provider believes that was a mistake or there was an error, they can provide their own screenshot that can prove otherwise and prove that they do in fact serve that location. Then the provider can also submit evidence that service is now available as a standard installment, and that would just be a copy of an order sent to that location. And then technology type. So you, of course, have um, different providers that can be listed, and then you've got their technology types that are provided alongside. So you've got fiber, sometimes it's coax or fixed wireless. An acceptable evidence for someone using this challenge type would be the manufacturer and model number of the residential gateway, and that's going to show the service is delivered through a specific technology. So counter evidence or rebuttal evidence for that would be that the provider is showing evidence from their network management system that the appropriate residential gateway matches what the provider is marketing as service. And then data caps, data capacity. So certain service plans are marketed with data caps and some are not. And so this challenge is for that situation. So an acceptable evidence would go, again, going back to the ISP webpage, certain websites will have lists of plans for different service. And if a challenger believes that there is a data cap that is unreasonable, they would take a screenshot of that and they would submit it. And then counter evidence or for rebuttal evidence, the provider would show their terms of service showing that it does not impose an unreasonable data cap or offers another plan at that location without a data cap. So then a business service only, this is a location that is residential, but what's being marketed is only for businesses. So again, you can go back to the website of many of the ISPs and their providers here. I know listening to this call have pretty detailed websites and search capabilities that provide a lot of information. So if people are using that, it's a pretty good resource. And there's also different ways to prove this, that the location is residential. So the challenger really has a wide range of different tools that they can use to prove this. The acceptable evidence for rebuttal, the provider would submit documentation that the service listed in the BDC is available at that location and is marketed to consumers. And then enforceable commitment. This means that broadband placement is going to occur at the location by the date established in the deployment obligation. So we are administering over the lifetime 3 different programs. We talked about SLFRF, CPF, and BEAD. And there are other programs happening simultaneously that have been approved before or that are in the works of being approved now. And those are different federal programs that would also be incorporated in enforceable commitment. We're talking TBCP, Reconnect, RDOF. There's several other programs that are happening that would fall under this. The acceptable evidence there would be an authorization letter or a legally binding agreement, let's say between a tribe or in between a tribe and an ISP. For rebuttals, it would need documentation that the provider has defaulted on the commitment or is otherwise unable to meet the commitment. And then on the reverse of that, the flip side, the location may fall within an enforceable commitment, but it is not included in those agreements. So declaration by an ISP subject to the enforceable commitment, that's an acceptable piece of evidence. There is not any evidence that would count for the rebuttal for this particular type of challenge. So then we have plan service, and for any of those folks that have been participating in our SLFRF or CPF, from a provider standpoint, you guys are familiar with a few of these already, plan service being one of them. This means that the broadband service will be received on or before 12 months from the beginning of the challenge process. And so evidence for that would include construction contracts, evidence of permitting, or a handful of other pieces of evidence that just proves that construction is on the way and it will be done within 12 months. Acceptable evidence for rebuttal. We're talking about documentation showing that the provider is no longer able to meet the commitment or that the planned deployment does not meet the required technology or performance requirements. Then we get into a challenge type, which is whether it's a community anchor institution or not. These can be pretty difficult to identify. I know that our office has, we've worked pretty extensively to come up with a list of community anchor institutions. And so acceptable evidence could include basically if you're familiar with a certain building and you know that it is defined by our definition of a CAI that we've got listed in our initial proposal, volume 1, you would submit that evidence to make that claim. And then simply the opposite would be true for the rebuttal. You would submit evidence that can prove that, in fact, it does not fall within our definition, or it's no longer in operation. And then again, pretty similar, but the reverse. This one is exactly the same. You would just basically flip-flop the other ones. So then timeline. What we're looking at is 30-day window for challenging. That process will begin shortly. We will send out communication. We will send out notification for when that process does begin. But once it does begin, the challenge phase will be 30 days, 30 calendar days. And then there will be a 30 calendar day window for all rebuttals. And then the office will take a certain amount of time to make its final determination before a final list or a tentative list is sent to NTIA for their final approval. So we are now concluded with that section, is talking more theoretically about the challenge process. We're now going to invite Dustin from Ready to take over, and he can share his screen and we can get into the more practical steps so you can see how the portal is actually going to work from a step-by-step basis.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Let me just take over the screen share here. How's that looking for y'all?
I can see it looks good.
Cool. So I'll just walk through the steps of the process, starting with registration and moving on through submitting a challenge and some of the functionality within the portal that you can use to research, prepare, and ultimately submit challenges. So first, you'll come to the registration page. It just has some very, very high level information on here, as well as links to the official Oklahoma BEAD information page, FAQs, and we'll add other relevant links here. You'll just come here. You would enter your information. And then here it's important that you select the correct type of organization. As Nick mentioned, the BEAD challenge process is open to several different entity types. So make sure you select the right organization type in this first step, because it will change the information that is requested on this second page. In this process, you can add additional documentation if you'd like to help kind of streamline the verification of your organization's identity and eligibility for the process. You will, once you submit it, it will go into a queue for review by OBO. You should receive, when you get to this step, just a confirmation email that that your registration was received. If you don't receive that immediately, check in spam or any other filters that might have caught it. And if you still can't find it, you can reach out to the OK helpdesk@ready.net, and that email address will be provided as well in the materials. And we can check on it just to make sure that email address was input correctly and help identify if there are any deliverability issues. Once you receive that email, it's just kind of a holding pattern. You'll receive a second additional email once your registration has been approved, and that will grant you access to the portal where you can file challenges when the process opens. Now here, I just want to walk through so just walk through some of the steps here. So once your registration and your account is approved, you can log in. You'll set up your credentials, add a password, and all that good stuff. You'll land on a landing page similar to this. Underneath the challenge node, there will be two available options here. It's the dashboard, which will appear like this. At the beginning, it will be empty because you will not have submitted any challenges yet. And then there's also the challenge map, which will show you a logged in version of the map that will have all of the locations and the eligibility. That map will look like this. So as you see here, there are 4 different colors of the dots in this default view. Those are for the classification of the locations. So if they are green, they have an existing enforceable commitment that was either captured through federal program or state programs. If they are the gray color, then that means that they are served according to the FCC National Broadband Map. And if they're blue, that means underserved, and pink is unserved. You'll see here, once you open up this challenge map, there are a few different challenge categories. This is just like an added layer of navigation so that we don't have an overwhelming list of challenge types for you. So if you click on planned or existing service, that will pull up these options here. Planned based on, as was described, something that can be deployed within 12 months of the launch of the challenge process, and existing service, something that might already be deployed but is not yet reflected in the broadband map. For the enforceable commitment category, you can challenge in either direction, either to say that a location that is not reflected here as being covered by an enforceable commitment is indeed covered, and saying that something that is reflected as having an enforceable commitment doesn't. Under the provider service level navigation, there's the availability, data cap, technology, and business service only options. And then for the anchor institution, challenging whether it is or is not an anchor institution. And based on what you select here, you may see the map filtered in different ways to the locations that are eligible for that challenge type. Just walk through kind of the steps for one challenge type. The general steps are pretty much the same, but the specifics vary based on the challenge type. So this flow that you'll see, it always starts off with setting the challenge details. followed by selecting the locations, then submitting the evidence, and then attesting to the challenge itself. And so what you'd see here for an availability challenge is you'll have to select the reason. These align with the FCC challenge reasons. You have to select the provider that you're challenging and the technology type of what's being challenged. There's drop downs for each of these, and as you click through, like when you select the provider, it will filter down so you can only select technology types offered by that provider, and then that will filter down the locations to only those locations where that provider offers that technology. Then comes the process of selecting the locations. And there are a couple of ways that you can do this. One is you can just search by the address and navigate directly to the location. You can click on it and there'll be a little pop-up and you can add that to the challenge. That works well if you're only trying to add one or just a few locations to a challenge. Separately, you can use a polygon, we call them zones, that you can upload and use that to select a larger number of locations. Or if you have the list of location IDs, you can just upload a CSV here. So you just click on upload list of locations. We require that it's a single column CSV with a header that just provides location IDs and nothing else. And then that will highlight those locations. Similarly, I'll kind of walk through how you would do this later, but if you've added in your polygons, you can then use this to drop down and select one of the polygons that you've uploaded or created to select the locations as well. Once you've selected the locations and move on to the next step, this is kind of what it will look like here. You'll see the locations that you've selected highlighted in this yellow, and the other locations surrounding it that have not been selected will just be left unhighlighted. On this evidence sheet, evidence page here, what you'll see is a description of the evidence required for this and how it needs to be structured for each of the challenge types. In the case of like an availability challenge, for example, it requires that there is specific evidence for each location that is challenged. And unlike some evidence in, say, like a planned service challenge, where evidence of a permit or construction would apply to numerous locations, the evidence for service availability really can only be provided at that location level. And so because of this, we have an evidence mapping spreadsheet. You'll download that spreadsheet. It will provide you with several fields, and it will pre-populate the location ID field with all of the location IDs that you've selected, so that you don't have to do that manually. But you will have to, the most important piece here is making sure that the evidence file name that you attach to that location is included in the evidence file field. Then you'll be able to upload that file, and that's the file that maps all of the evidence to the locations. And then you'll upload all of the evidence files separately. And if you're submitting a lot of large files, definitely ask that you compress that and create a zip file to upload, just to make sure that the upload and submission works within the system. And then once you get to this step, you just need to confirm and attest to the that you have authority to submit, and that, to the best of your knowledge, the challenge is indeed based on evidence that you believe to be true, complete, and accurate. Then what you see here is, if you go back to your dashboard, you'll see a challenge that shows up in your dashboard, and this will track all of the challenges that you submit. If you're a provider during the rebuttal stage, if you've received any challenges, you'll see an additional tab in the dashboard that shows challenges received. And for all challengers here, you'll see an additional tab that shows other types of challenges that are open for general rebuttal. Sometimes you make mistakes, and in that case, you may need to withdraw a challenge and resubmit it. If that happens to be the case, you can simply withdraw the challenge by clicking on these three little dots here and withdrawing challenge here. Then it will show up in your withdrawn challenges tab, and if you need to pull any of the details, you can still see that challenge, so you don't just lose it. It's not deleting it, it's just withdrawing it from consideration. Getting to some of the tools that are available and the functionality within the portal to support the participation in the challenge process. There's a left panel here that you can open up. It gives you different layers that you can look at. You can filter. If you uncheck these boxes, you'll see that it filters out some of those locations. If you care about the building type, you can always toggle that as well. And then if you're interested in MDUs, you can filter the unit count of the building so that you're only seeing locations with a unit count at or above a certain level. And then there are different overlays that you can toggle on and off, primarily the counties here, and then zone boundaries would be the zones that you upload in the form of polygons that you either draw or upload KMLs. Clicking over to the zones tab here, should you want to use this, you'll see all of the zones that you've already created. And then if you click create zone here, all you need to do is go in and give it a zone name, click on define zone boundaries. You can either draw the boundaries depending on the complexity of it, or you can upload and import KMZ, KML, or GeoJSON file. Once you've done that, it will select the locations within it. And you can see here, it'll give you the number of locations selected within that polygon here, and you'll be able to get more details in a separate view as well. If you recall, this would, once you've uploaded this, you would then be able to select the locations using that that zone in the challenge flow here. And again, I just walk through the one challenge type here. But if there are any challenge types that you plan on filing once the challenge window opens, well, first, I'll definitely recommend reviewing the user guide when it's published. That kind of breaks down the components of each challenge type, but also if you want to get a sense early on, once the challenge window opens, you can click through all of these and see what's required and what the process looks like, and kind of plan out your 30-day window accordingly. that's pretty much all I have. Happy to answer any questions if there's something I can go into more detail on.
Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We can wait here a couple more minutes if you guys have anything. I'll say in the meantime, just moving forward and looking forward over the next 30 days or so, we will, like you mentioned, have a user guide that gets published to the website here very shortly. An email notification will be sent out when that is available. For anyone on this call now that's registered, that has used the link to get into this call today, we will make sure, if you're not already within our email notification list, you will be included in that. So that moving forward with BEAD, you will be up to speed on everything that happens. And then we will also, if there are any questions today, but then again, for the other seminars that we have, if there are questions that we receive, and let's say you guys aren't able to make those calls, which those calls will be very similar to today. So if you don't make them, I understand. But any questions that are asked during those seminars and during those time periods, we will put an FAQ together that will live on the BEAD web page on our website, so that you can see what's being asked across the board, so that you're staying up to date with everything. Okay, the version of the FCC map that we will be using is going to be version 4. It's been a question that has come up with our other programs as well, because everyone needs to be, using the same data and working from the same data. Version 4 is what we will be using for the BEAD Challenge process. Yes. So the question is, will CSV files be posted for unserved and underserved locations? Yes, the list of locations will be published on our website. Again, a notification will be sent out for that, and it will be unserved, underserved, and served locations. So there will be a few different lists there that are going to be available for everybody. Okay, I will give one more minute for any more last minute questions, and then I think we will get off this call. This is being recorded, so along with adding these questions to an FAQ, we will have this presentation on our YouTube channel, which we will link to the website for anyone to refer back to. For any locations that are submitted with version 5, it looks like we have a question about that. Evidence of that submission through the FCC will be required within the challenge. So as much evidence that a provider can include within that challenge is going to be necessary and very helpful to make that determination. Yes, this slide deck, the question is will this slide deck be provided on the FAQ page? We will put this up. It will be its own link, and we will put that up on the website as well. This will probably be a link that's next to the guide, the challenge guide, when that gets published. Okay, well, I think that will wrap us up for today. I appreciate everyone for being on the call, and I do appreciate the questions. Like I said, we'll make sure that these are listed and answered on an FAQ page. And then we will have this link available on our website for anyone to refer back to at a later time. So thank you again, and you guys enjoy the rest of your Thursday.